So welcome back, my friends, to Jen Zen's Ayurveda Kitchen. Today's short video is going to be on just a couple ingredients, making a pickled fennel and beet mixture. It's pickled, but it's going to be a cooked pickled. And I want to talk a little bit about those two vegetables coming together. So fennel is pungent, bitter, and sweet. And oftentimes when we cook our food, the taste may slightly change. And with beets, that especially is true because beets are bittersweet and astringent. But when you begin to cook them, they become a little bit more sweet and a little less astringent. We are still in Pitta season, so it is August 8th or 9th, I think, Wednesday anyways. But we are starting to shift into that Vata season, and you can feel that by the winds that we've been having lately. Knowing the Vata dosha is basically, if you understand wind, is what Vata looks like in the dosha, in the person. So that's lots of movement. You can tell that I tend to talk and speak with a lot of movement with my hands, and that's the Vata dosha showing up within me. But as the winds start to come in, that can start to allow Vata to move a little bit out of balance because it can get aggravated by too much wind. So beets are a root vegetable, which is great to pacify the Vata dosha as well as the Pitta dosha. And interestingly, beets tend to be hot, especially when eaten raw. They are much more hot, but when you start to cook them, they do start to break down a little bit and become a little more cooling. They're still warm, they're still hot to a sense, but just not as penetrating. And so interestingly, it makes it balancing. Beets are balancing for Pitta, even though they do have the hot quality. Pitta is the hot dosha of the three doshas, Vata, Pitta, Kapha. Pitta is the only one that is heat related and is related to the summer season. But there are, I think I mentioned in one video, a pravab, which is a interesting quality that the food has and the way that it reacts in the body. So it might seem aggravating. For example, the beets being hot might seem aggravating to Pitta, but because they're grounding and nourishing and a root vegetable, they're sweet. They also do bring Pitta down as well. So very pacifying for them. So some of the qualities, going back to fennel, qualities in Ayurveda, that's known as the gunas. There's 20 different gunas in Ayurveda, and we'll begin to talk more about those as well, especially as we shift into the new season. But some of those qualities in fennel is dry, light, there's a lot of liquid in them, and they're also cooling. So one of the things when we cook foods together, so beets, as I already mentioned, is hot. When we cook foods together, they start to meld and their qualities start to behave and be nice to each other and just mix well. But they also find balance. So in cooking and in general, and hot and cold, they balance each other. So when there's too much heat, we want to bring in the cold quality, and when there's too much cold, we want to bring in the hot. So when we cook with foods that have one of each or both, that helps the meal to become a little bit more balancing for the different doshas. Back to beets, so they're also have a lot of liquid as well, but they're also very clearing. And as I mentioned already, they become a little bit more cooling as we cook them. Both vegetables are very cleansing for the body. Specifically, the beets are cleansing for the blood and the liver and the heart, basically any organ that the blood runs through, but specifically has an affinity for detoxification of the liver and also the gallbladder. It's an anti-inflammatory, but as a word of caution with beets, so we tend to like to make all foods or one superfood great for everybody. Ayurveda looks at that very differently in the terms of everybody's an individual. So what might be balancing for you is not necessarily balancing for me. And that's with food, and that's with lifestyle as well. But beets are a blood thinner and a vasodilator. So people who might have hypertension might want to take a little bit more caution with eating them, or people who are already on blood thinners may want to avoid them because you don't want to thin the blood maybe even more. Obviously talk to your doctor about that. They're also known to irritate the kidneys, the beets do. So just a couple cautions there. Really, there's cautions with every food depending on the person, and I'll try to start to speak more about that. Beets are also quite a laxative, so if you've ever eaten beets, you might notice with the next time you urinate, your pee might be a little bit pink or red. That's okay. That's where that irritation for the kidneys can happen if you're going to be irritated by it. But generally, if your kidneys are fine, there should be no problem. But that is the detoxification process starting in the body. And then one of the great things, if you are ever curious about your digestive system and how fast it is, and you're not really sure, eat some beets and the beets will tell you. So how fast they come out of the body, and you'll see them come out in your poop, is how fast your digestive system is generally. So just another caution, know that if you eat too many beets, you might poop a lot, and maybe that's okay. Both of the vegetables stimulate energy. They both cleanse. Fennel is very moisturizing for the body. It's actually estrogenic in nature. But despite that, it moisturizes and builds despite it being a diuretic. And also the phenols are great for clearing the lungs and generally really good for digestion. So both vegetables are great for digestion. In general, this simple little recipe that I put together, it's just fennel and beets mixed together with some water, some apple cider vinegar, which brings in that sour quality or sour taste. So in the fennel and the beets, we have the sweet, bitter, astringent, and pungent taste. But now the vinegar adds in a little bit of sour, and then of course I've added some pink Himalayan salt, which adds in the salt taste. So now we've got all 6 tastes in this really simple dish. And as I may have mentioned before, that to balance a meal or balance your day with food, bringing in all 6 tastes is very important, because each taste has a very important function in the digestive process, which in time I will start to unravel that information for you, but I don't want to jump too far ahead. So this will be posted on my website along with all my other recipes, and we will see you back here sometime very soon. Take care.